first of all, you must understand that I am a clinician, so I'm going to be talking more from the application point of view of all these technologies rather than going into extensive details of the process itself. You know that the next generation sequencing has become an invaluable tool to put genomic sequencing into clinical practice. And many of the challenges which were faced initially have been overcome by the incorporation of clinically relevant genomic sequencing into the NGS panels, so that there has become a wide use of this NGS right from diagnosis to therapy to actually come into the era of precision medicine or precision medicine in oncology. It is important to note that the current NCCN guidelines incorporates these NGS tools in almost 67% of their guidelines. Now, how has the sequencing evolved? You know that it began in 1977 when Sanger received the Nobel Prize for the Sanger sequencing. And from then on, over the past 3 decades, it has moved on to the current next generation sequencing, which is a high throughput DNA sequencing and has very important advantages of a small sample size requirement, low reagent costs, and a quick turnaround time as compared to sequential testing that we were used to doing in many solid tumors. Next slide. So, next slide. So, we can say that the next generation sequencing has stimulated the next generation of cancer diagnostic. So, how is it defined today? It's a type of DNA sequencing technology that uses parallel sequencing of multiple small fragments of the DNA in a single reaction. These are parallel actual sequence of many small fragments of DNA of the tumor in a single reaction to determine the sequence. Next slide. So what is the basic process? As I said, I won't go into the details. Being a clinician, I would want all the clinicians to be aware of the basic processes involved in this. So we begin with the sample collection and DNA extraction. This can be done from paraffin tissue, from the blood as for the ctDNA or cfDNA, or by the DNA obtained by reverse transcription of RNA, because you know that apart from NGS where DNA is used, you can also have NGS where RNA is used. But there too, you have to reverse transcription of the RNA to DNA is required. Then you come to actually the template generation. So this DNA which has been extracted from a tumor is fragmented, and this fragmentation depends on which platform being used, its size really depends on that. And then there is a ligation to the adapter, and then this ligated adapter as well as which is called as the primer, along with the DNA fragments of the tumor, are then immobilized either on a solid surface or on beads. And this you can call as the tumor template or the tumor sample DNA. And this is the one that you're going to sequence. And the sequencing is actually done by fluorescence attached nucleotides, which then get attached to this tumor sample, and it actually reveals the sequence. So that is how the interrogation of the sequence of the tumor is done. Now, the nucleotides, as I said, could be actually using fluorescent dyes. It could also use what are called as pyrophosphate or H ions. So these are different techniques, and they differ according to the NGS platforms that one uses. Finally, you come to the last part and the most difficult of all, and that is the data analysis. So you can just visualize that you're here in parallel sequencing multiple gene fragments, DNA fragments. So it generates an enormous amount of data, and this then electronically and computationally aligned against the normal tissue, and that is how you get the data that you see on the NGS platform. So next slide. And this is just to put it into a proper perspective, that you have the fresh, the tissue, and then the DNA extraction, then the NGS process, which I have just actually described, and then going on to the actual report after the data is computed. Next slide. So the basic workflow, as you can see from sample collection, then I've just given you a little bit of detail of how the DNA is fragmented, and then how the template is prepared by adapter ligation, and then how it is sequenced by attaching the nucleotides, and then the data analysis. Next slide. So there are different types of sequencing. That is the whole genome sequencing, then the whole exome sequencing, and the targeted panel sequencing. Now the whole genome and whole exome sequencing are actually very time consuming and expensive procedures. So most of the time what is now used is the target panel sequences, which may be 20 to 100 gene panels. And as you know, some of the ones that we are using may go up to 400 gene panels to 500 gene panels. As you would know that our DNA has about 20,000 genes, and of which 500 genes are actually involved in tumorigenesis or the carcinogenic process. Next slide. So these are all the sequencing platforms which we use in practice. I think most of you are quite familiar with platforms such as the Foundation one, then you have the Caris, and then you have the recent one is the Guardant one, especially used in GI malignancies, and then you have several others, and then of course you do have those which are also used in the blood or the plasma. Next slide. Now, the applications, of course, as Dr. Ashwin has brought to your notice, that we have several gene panels for NGS in India. The applications, of course, as Dr. Ashwin, there are other panels being used by various companies and with a number of genes involved, but much lesser than the 400 to 500 genes which some of these others which I've mentioned actually use. Now, what are the applications of the next generation sequencing in cancer? The first application that comes to mind to us all clinicians is the gene alterations, that is the molecular targets for targeted therapy. Now, as you are aware that the next generation sequencing can detect mutations, the single nucleotide variants, copy number changes, that is amplifications, then structural abnormalities like insertions, deletions, translocations, fusions. But you must know that depending on the select panels that we use, sometimes large deletions and insertions may be missed. And then, of course, the commonly used malignancies, apart from some of the hematologic malignancies, are non-small cell lung cancer, melanoma, ovarian and breast cancer. So these are some of the cancers. Next slide. So now let us come to some of the recent data, especially from the Asian counterparts, of using this NGS, especially in lung cancer, which is the most common cancer where we use it. So we are used to a sequential genes target recognition, but now with the use of NGS, you can look at all these at once. So if you look at this Chinese study, they have selected about 60 patients, and using the NGS panel, they found these mutations in 68% of the patients, and you can see they range from EGFR, KRAS, BRAF, ERBB2, ALK. So these were the mutations that they found in their limited sample. Next slide. And this is the recent data from the TMC, which is the next generation sequencing in lung cancer and Indian initial experience of 154 cases. They looked at the mutations in 72% of the patients, the most common being the TP53, 6%, EGFR in 32%, KRAS in 18%, ERBB2 in 3.2%, and BRAF in 1.94%. So you can see that by using these panels, instead of doing sequential testing, you can get the results at one shot, and this is in a much shorter time than you would expect by doing sequential testing. Next slide. Now this is the MSK Impact Study, and they have their own platform, and you can see that they had done the NGS in more than 10,000 patients of metastatic disease of various histologies. 37% had at least single mutations which were clinically relevant. 1,000 patients also chose to go for the germline mutations. So 17.5% were linked to genetic predisposition as opposed to 5.10% that we get in the population when we studied by other methods. And of course, then you have the anti-RK fusion detected. Next slide. So now look at the second NGS application, and which we are again very familiar with, is detection of mutations conferring resistance to treatment. The standing example, one of the most important being the T790M mutation in patients who are on TKIs, especially like gefitinib and erlotinib. Then of course you have the RET mutation, the MET mutations in non-small cell lung cancer. Then you have the KRAS, NRAS and BRAF which confer resistance to the anti-EGFR therapies. So these are some of the important applications of the NGS as far as detection of mutations conferring resistance to therapy. Next slide. You come to the third important one, and that is tumor mutational burden. Now, I will not dwell much on this because it is still in the realm of investigation rather than clinical application. What it actually detects is hypermutated tumor, which has a high number of somatic mutations, which actually determine the tumor mutational burden. Mutations cause development of new antigens and susceptibility to immune checkpoint inhibitors. Next slide. Of course, I won't go further into the details because, as I said, it still remains an investigational tool. A high tumor TMB is associated with clinical efficacy of immunotherapy. There is no consensus today on the methodologies and the cutoffs. And when the whole exome sequencing was used, there was data on pembrolizumab where there was a longer PFS. The checkmate also 0 to 6 showed longer PFS, but you can see that the cutoffs are varying. Next slide. Now, applications of NGS also in microsatellite instability, and this I will go into details when I come to MSI. Next slide. Then, of course, there is application of NGS because you can detect several genes which are responsible for the DNA repair pathway, and the mutations in this could render this pathway deficient. So you have the NGS detecting other mutations apart from the BRCA1 and 2, and thus indicating a sensitivity to the PARP inhibitors. Next slide. And then important one is biomarker driven clinical trials. So it is detected, that is the, you detect biomarker with the NGS, and these are the patients who are then selected for the clinical trials. And the most important examples are like the French Shiva trial, which of course did not meet its endpoint, and so it did not match up. So when they used it and compared it to standard therapy, the patients selected on the basis of the biomarkers did not do better. But you must remember that these were 3 rather outdated markers which had very limited molecular targeted therapies, and that may to some extent explain the failure of this trial. Then you have the NCI match and the ASCO TAPUR study. Next slide. So you get all these trials grouped into umbrella and basket trials. So basket trials are actually driven by a single mutation in various cancer types, whereas the umbrella trial is driven by histology with different mutation. Next slide. Applications in, so this is the NICE study which looked at the liquid biopsy being equivalent or even better than tissue based. Next slide. So the advantages of NGS, as you see, is that it has a lower cost, but of course that is for the future. At present, it is expensive, but some of the panels which are available in India are cost effective. You need a lesser amount of tissue and less time. Next slide. The challenges and disadvantages are the cost, the standardization, the clinician's interpretation of results, which is most important. You get the report, it is very important how you interpret this and put it into practice. And of course, the patient education, because when you talk of such sophisticated techniques, the patient's aspirations are extremely high, and one should explain, especially in the later lines metastatic setting, that it has limited value, and after spending that much, they may not get a targeted drug. And one must also explain the implications if in the somatic mutations you do find some mutations which are relevant for the hereditary panel. Next slide. And this is one of the knowledge base tool which is available to clinicians to actually interpret these results. Next slide. Now coming to the last part is the mismatch repatch system. You are very much aware of that where there is damage to the sequence of nucleotides, then the DNA, this is recognized by the mismatch repair system genes like the MSH3, MSH6 and MSH2. And once it is recognized, then the repair of this occurs by a combination of the 4 well-known genes, which I'll come to next slide. And then you have the microsatellite instability resulting from the dysfunctional DNA repair as a result of a mutation in one of these genes or hypermethylation. And then it is diagnostic for hereditary syndromes, predictive for response to immunotherapy and 5-FU, and prognostic in GI cancers. Next slide. So these are the consensus recommendation on MSI standard definitions. I won't go into details. I'm sorry, I'm not able to make out whether I've run out of time. So repetitive DNA sequences in coding and non-coding regions. So because of the mismatch repair, you have a collection of these nucleotides leading to microsatellite instability or MSI high tumors. Next slide. So then you have the DNA mismatch repair, which I have already alluded to, and 4 genes which are important, which we are all aware of. Next slide. And then you have this definition of microsatellite instability, which I have already alluded to, and also that thousands of these mutations actually accumulate as a result and lead to the MSI tumors, MSI tumors. Next slide.
Ma'am, please wind up.
Yeah, this is the last slide. Next slide. Next slide. So this is the determination which we are aware of: immunohistochemistry and molecular biology. Next slide. And this is the interpretation in the colorectal cancer of the Lynch syndrome. If the BRAF is mutated and if it is the BRAF wild type, then you know that there is it may be sporadic. Next slide. And then the predictive marker as far as immunotherapy and 5-FU is concerned. And the last slide. So the conclusions are that NGS has become an integral part of personalized therapy. MSI is an important predictive and diagnostic tool, and TMB is predictive of response to immunotherapy, but it is still investigational. I'm sorry for running over time, but I'm not able to see the timing on my screen, and that is the reason. Yeah, next slide. That's it. Thank you.